Hi, everyone. So I am a huge Shakespeare nerd, and scanning and analyzing text is actually one of my very favorite things. So I'm going to quickly share several things regarding scansion, which is dividing the lines of verse into feet and stressed syllable patterns and text analysis that have been really helpful for me as I've learned and continue to learn about Shakespeare and the specifics of his text and writing styles. All right, so as we've learned in this module of the rhythmical heartbeat of Shakespeare's verse, iambic pentameter is our starting point for Shakespeare's verse. Within each of the 5 feet in a line of iambic pentameter, there are 2 syllables, the first unstressed and the second stressed. I like to note an unstressed syllable with a U shape and a stressed syllable with a diagonal line. There are also a number of variations on iamb that are included in this chart. There are more, there are definitely more, but these are the variations that we see most often. So in addition to the iamb, you see noted the trochee, whose pattern is opposite of an iambic foot, a spondee, just 2 stressed syllables, the anapest, which is unstressed, unstressed, stressed, which actually kind of sounds like the word itself, anapest. There's the dactyl, which is the opposite of an anapest, and a pyrrhic foot, which is 2 unstressed syllables. And often when there is a pyrrhic foot, it's followed by a spondee. And this combination is often called a pyrrhic spondee pairing, or sometimes it's referred to as double iamb. So as we start thinking about the scansion of a line of verse, so let's start with a line of iamb. All right, so this line from the Merchant of Venice is a beautiful flowing iambic line. So if I say it overemphasizing the stress pattern, it goes, in sooth, I know not why I am so sad. And I like to use my fingers to help me keep track of the feet in each line. And for scanning purposes, the first thing that I like to do is actually mark each foot. I use diagonal lines to separate each of the 5 feet in a line of iambic pentameter. I also like to go ahead and circle any ending punctuation. So a period, question mark, or exclamation point. That just helps me remember to drive through the end of the phrase, especially when the phrase continues into a second or a third line. And then if it's helpful, you can always note the stress pattern above or below the line of text. So again, I use a U shape for unstressed syllables and a diagonal line for stressed syllables. All right, so now let's look at this line from Love's Labour's Lost that contains some potential variations on the iamb pattern. And for me, again, the first thing that I like to do is go ahead and divide the feet. So now madam, summon up your dearest spirits. Okay, so we have an extra syllable at the end of this line. No worries, that's called a feminine ending, and she is totally allowed to be there. So I like to mark them with a circled lowercase f. Like any other variation, a feminine ending is meant to catch the audience's attention and often signifies that the character is in some sort of heightened emotional state. Now, this line is probably fine to leave in iamb. Now, madam, summon up your dearest spirits. Yeah, that sounds fine. But I do think we have some options to make the first foot a spondee or a trochee. So either now, madam, or now, madam, right? So as our resources said, there is artistic license, right, that the actor can take in deciding on scansion for their character's text. All right, now sometimes you can elide or combine 2 syllables so that a line of verse better fits into iambic pentameter. So these 2 lines are from the same soliloquy in Two Gentlemen of Verona. And if I scan the first one, and here is writ, love wounded, pro, ts, lovely, fits right into the meter. And now the second one. But twice or thrice was proteus written down. All right, so initially we may think that's a feminine ending, but the second half of this line was really clunky, felt really awkward, and so we want to make that rhythm feel more iambic. So what we can do is actually elide the ts of proteus so that this line scans, but twice or thrice was proteus written down. Much better. So from an audition or a performance perspective, one of the biggest benefits of scanning your verse is that your pronunciations will be correct, right? So you'll know whether it's Hermia versus Hermia, or by Our Lady versus by Our Lady, etc., right? So the patterns, variations, and punctuations in Shakespeare's blank verse are all sort of a roadmap, right, to help you understand the emotional state of a character. And I think that a wonderful example of this is Peter Quince's prologue speech at the top of Act 5 in Midsummer. So Quince is one of the mechanicals and appropriately speaks in prose throughout the play until the end, when he and the other mechanicals perform Pyramus and Thisbe for the nobles. And Quince is completely out of his element in speaking in verse. He's also incredibly nervous to be presenting this play in front of all of these really important people. And the audience can understand that about him by the clunky patterns and the seemingly random punctuation in his prologue speech. And we could spend a whole bunch of time analyzing potential variations, but let's just strictly look at the I am and the punctuation. So, if we offend, it is with our goodwill, that you should think we come not to offend, but with goodwill, to show our simple skill that is the true beginning of our end. Consider then we come but in despite. We do not come as minding to contest you. Our true intent is all for your delight. We are not here, that you should hear repent you, feminine ending. The actors are at hand, and by their show you shall know all that you are like to know. So some super awkward, clunky rhythms in there, right? Poor Peter Quince. I love his prologue speech, though. I think it's hysterical. All right, so one last thing that is really helpful for me to keep in mind when I'm analyzing Shakespeare's text is that his plays are pre-Freudian. And that probably sounds super obvious, like, yes, of course, they were written before Sigmund Freud was around. But I think this is a really significant thing, actually. So Freud's theories majorly contributed to the idea of subtext. And we see the significance of subtext really emerge in modern dramas, right? So Williams, Miller, Inge, so often it's what the characters aren't saying that's important. And that is not the case with Shakespeare. His characters are voicing exactly how they feel, no subtext. And that I think is a shift for a lot of actors to think about, because thinking about and including subtext is, for a lot of us, a big step in our preparation process. And, of course, that's not to say that actors can't play with or incorporate subtext in Shakespeare's lines, but I do think that it is really important to think about this idea of characters, who are communicating their true and authentic emotions in pre-Freudian works like Shakespeare's plays. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this was helpful. Bye.